Hello and welcome to this presentation about interviews as a method of data collection. This is intended for VCE Computing students, both in Units 1 and 2 Computing and 3 and 4 Software Development. There is a little bit of information which is more specific and I'll try and break those out as we go. So let's have a quick look. So, students can identify the strengths and weaknesses of an interview as a way to collect data. All of these methods are good for some things and not so good for other things. No great surprises there. So let's have a look at what an interview is. Well, an interview is a way of collecting qualitative research methods. You could sit with somebody and get them to give you quantitative data, but it's a very expensive way to get something you could probably get from a survey. If the person has very low literacy, for instance, or you need to talk them through the concepts, you could do it for quantitative data, but most of the time what you're looking for is a nuanced, deep understanding of what it is that the person wants. They involve direct, structured or semi-structured conversations with the project stakeholders, potential users, and domain experts. And by domain experts, I mean somebody who understands what's going on in their space, even if they're not directly involved in using the solution. They're often used in software development, so in Year 12 you're going to be using this, or Units 3 and 4 I should say, you're going to be using this to collect information about the solution that you're making. In Year 11 you are just more generally using it, more in the field of data analytics, of just getting information and responding to it. So when you're doing it in the field of software development, you're trying to find information about user requirements, project needs, and the different stakeholder perspectives. What's important to different people. Now, in terms of interview types, there are three. There is the heavily structured interview, and a good example of that is a job interview. In the setting that I work in a government school, you actually have to ask all of the interviewees the same question. So they're quite structured interviews. You can't just go off in a tangent with one person without giving the other applicants an opportunity. But that's a different sort of interview than we're talking about here. And you probably don't want too structured an interview, or you risk missing information that comes up unexpectedly. A semi-structured is probably most likely for this sort of situation, where you go in with some clear questions, but you listen what the person's saying and you let them lead you into some areas. Some people will need to be refocused. There are some people like myself who are great talkers and will just go off on a tangent forever, but I would say semi-structured is generally what you're looking for. And there's completely unstructured. I wouldn't recommend it. I find that most secondary students are not particularly good at dealing with an unstructured interview. Obviously your mileage may vary. So what are some strengths and weaknesses? Well, if you're in class with me now, this is where I would get you to tell me. But let's have a look at it together. So the strengths are that it can provide an in-depth, nuanced, and by nuance we mean you can see the shades of grey, not just black and white, understanding of what they need. I would also say that you're almost certainly not going to get a full understanding from just sitting down with somebody once. Some of the really successful people I've seen, and I'm sure that Jackson and Will won't mind me naming them, have gone back to the client 3 or 4 times and had further discussions with them as things have come up, and that gives the client a chance to spend time getting to know it, and you spend time getting to know what you need to know from them. So it's probably not a one and done situation. It allows clarification of complex requirements. What do they really want versus what do they think that they want? And by that I don't mean that stakeholders or product owners don't know their own mind. They do, but most people are not very articulate about getting it right the first time so that it's absolutely unequivocal. And so it takes some work to sort of get something that's robust. It enables you to have direct interaction with them and hopefully get their buy-in. Software development's expensive. It's sometimes hard to get people to take up the use of it. They might need to be the champion for this software. Talking to them and making them feel involved and them genuinely being involved. It's not just about managing their feelings. And it can capture contextual and emotional insights. You can learn that it's creating, conflict in a particular situation. I was amazed when I had problems with my electricity at home with the solar panel and the battery and stuff to find that my solar installer didn't check messages from the electricity company because they were basically in dispute with them. They had some agreement, and their way of dealing with this was to shut off communication. And that could be, a massive make or break deal in a software, in a development environment. And if you didn't know that, well, then you might not understand why things were the way that they were. So the strengths of an interview, those strengths there, they're strengths. I think, this is weaknesses of an interview. I'll need to change this slide. Everybody carries around biases. You, me, everybody carries around biases. If we think somebody's a fool or we're impressed by somebody, we might fill in the gaps. We might decide, based on our experience with the company, what they really mean and what they really say. It's actually really, really hard to actually put aside your biases. The subjective nature of the responses. Some person who might be absolutely fed up with their situation might tell you all these negative things, and what they're actually telling you about is something else. They're talking about some conflict that hasn't been resolved, but they're expressing it through frustration with the software. So it can be hard to know whether what you're getting is the truth. The truth is such an interesting concept. It's terribly expensive and time consuming. Just getting time to meet with people, you can't actually achieve very much in an hour. I will often sit down and have a discussion about things for an hour and get only ever so slightly closer to a point of agreement. You'd be amazed by how much time it takes and how hard it is to get the time, even from people who want to work with you. And it is just, I think, probably the second most expensive way, or on par with observation. And time consuming, and it actually says that twice, so that's something else that I need to fix. And it requires skilled interviewing techniques. So not everybody is a born interviewer. In fact, I'd say nobody is really a born interviewer. All right, so the importance, another typo, importance in software development. Well, the first thing that's really important is clarity. They want to know what you're doing, you want to know what they want. The other two things that I think are absolutely crucial are clarity and clarity. If you don't have clarity, you're in real trouble. You want to know as best as you can what they want, and I cannot overstate that. All right, we've got some true and false statements. Let's have a look at these. Interviews are generally more cost-effective than surveys when collecting data from large populations of participants. That is absolutely false. A key strength of interviews is that the interviewer can ask follow-up questions and clarify responses in real time, allowing for a deeper exploration of topics. That's the defining virtue of it. That's true. Interviews typically produce highly structured, quantifiable data that requires minimal interpretation from the researcher. False, false, and false. No, that's absolutely not true. It's often as much work, maybe even more, to go through, and you probably want to record it if you can. Even video recorded if you can, if the person's comfortable with that, to go through and just go, are they expressing hesitation here? Now that I'm sitting back looking at the situation, how should I read this? It can be really slow. Okay, one weakness of interviews is that the interviewer bias can influence the way questions are asked or how responses are interpreted. Yeah, that's a huge issue. Very true. Interviews are considered more time-efficient data collection method compared with observational studies, particularly when gathering information from geographically dispersed participants. No, I wouldn't say they're any more time-efficient. I would say they're both really time-inefficient. I don't think one is really more time-efficient than the other. And a significant limitation of interviews is that the participants may provide socially desirable responses rather than honest answers, particularly when discussing sensitive topics. This is a huge issue. You might not know that the current software was the brainchild of somebody's manager, and their feelings are going to be really hurt if they find that the employee is saying, oh, it's really frustrating to use. So they might in fact say, oh yeah, it's fine, we just need some more time to get used to it. And it's hard to know. It really is genuinely hard to know what the truth is behind what people are saying, because there are all sorts of dynamics, particularly in workplaces. So that's the end of this presentation, typos and all, and I hope that's proven useful to you.